Hi, welcome to BariNation, where we support the bariatric community with humor, humility, and honesty.
You've just tuned into a podcast that welcomes you into a community, a resource center, and a safe place that powers your journey towards personal wellness.
Our goal is you leave us today feeling hopeful, inspired, and ready to live your best bariatric life.
Hey, BariNation listeners and watchers. Before we get to this episode with our longtime friend and BariNation expert, Kayla Girgen, we want to let you know about a really special podcast episode that will be premiering on February 18th called The Heart of BariNation. We've been talking about transformation a lot lately and want to share with all of you some great things that will be happening in the BariNation ecosystem in 2026. We've grown so much together and want you to be some of the first people to know what the future holds for BariNation. In this episode, we'll share how the podcast, community, and education will grow into something that helps us reach and support more people fighting the disease of obesity. We hope you tune in on February 18th. And if you want to stay in the know, join our weekly newsletter. Click the link in the show notes to sign up. Okay, let's get to my amazing Rucking conversation with Kayla. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the BariNation Podcast. Today, I am joined by our friend and expert, Kayla Girgen, who just published her very first book.
Speechless. Yeah.
I know. I mean, when I think I knew you were writing this a year ago, and then you sent me my very first PR box that I've ever gotten. And oh, I know. I saved it for a special moment so I could record my true reaction. And I knew the book was inside. I didn't know all the other goodies were inside. But to get that box and to pick up this book and feel it, and then open up to a random page and instantly realize, oh, I'm going to need my highlighter for this, and then proceed to highlight the entire book, was a magical experience. Congratulations. This is huge, huge.
Thank you. It is surreal. I know we were talking before this and you're like, what's it like? And I was like, I don't know. It's like an out of body experience because, you kind of check out in the writing process and then you check back in for some editing and then you check out again. And like somebody explained it as a wedding, you do all of this planning up front and then there's this big long waiting and now we're to like crunch time where now it's book launch and it's promotion and recording podcasts and doing all the things that you can't do a year in advance. And then you're like, what did I write again? So it'll be good when you remind me.
That cracked me up too. Right before I hit record, I was like, oh, I wanted to read this passage and this passage. And you were like, oh yeah, that's great. Cause I can't remember what I said on every page. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yes. I had some intentional disconnection from the book just because, when you're like very much a detail oriented, want to fix everything perfectionist, and then you just see all the things you want to change. So it was good for me to take a little bit of a break from the book.
I can absolutely understand that. Absolutely understand that. So before we go any deeper, one of my friends reminded me today, right? People also listen to this podcast. So hello, friends. We are celebrating and acknowledging Kayla's launch of her book called Ruck Fit. And that is what today's podcast is all about. So Kayla has written an amazing book on rucking, the history of it, its power to help us become metabolically well, the reasons that rucking works, and then how to get started. So her book is a phenomenal introduction to what rucking is. And what I appreciated, I appreciate a lot of things about this book, but what you do really well, Kayla, is break very complex ideas like metabolic flexibility, metabolic syndrome, down into bite-sized nuggets of wisdom that are very consumable for people, especially bariatric patients. So this book is going to be one that you, I think, refer to again and again, as I have since I first got it, to better understand just the power of rucking and also just to get out of my own way. And I will show you all this for proof or it didn't happen. So if you're watching, you're going to see me. And if you're listening, I'll describe. But this, oh my God. I'm holding up a 16-pound weighted vest that I purchased from Amazon, and I have not taken it out of the packaging yet, but I have a weighted vest and I'm going to start rucking.
The goal is by the end of this episode, we're going to hear like you slowly peeling back the layers and the resistance. Yeah.
Dude, it's going to be so good. And I think I've had this vest for like 3 weeks now, 4 weeks now, and arrived. And my husband was like, what the hell did you order? Not remembering I ordered it. And then I opened the box and I was like, oh my God, it's my weighted vest. And I had this moment of like, shit, now I have to start doing it.
Right.
Like,
this is a story I hear so often too. I have so many people that are like, I ordered it. It's here. I'm waiting for this. I'm waiting for the weather to be nice and all of these different conditions to fall into place.
yep. And that is just a way for us to try something that we're fearful might not work for us. And that's where I'm at. I don't want to spend any time doing something that is not going to be 100% return on my investment. Even though your book very clearly tells me all of the reasons why it will not be a wasted investment, I still struggle with this.
Well, and I think like you said, like you have it and now you feel that pressure to like, okay, now I actually have to do it. Like there's
Yeah.
a level of commitment. I think sometimes that can be a little bit scary, especially when you're like, okay, I have enough on my plate. I'm checking all of these other boxes already. This is just one more thing. So hopefully this will help show listeners how they can double dip on some things and get more benefit. So
And that is like, I think my favorite phrase. We're always looking for ways to like double dip hydration and protein or so many things along our bariatric journey. And I walk often, not daily. And it's always been in the back of my mind since you started teaching rucking classes in BariNation. It's like you already walk, just throw some weight on your back and go. For whatever reason, huge roadblock, but your book arrived. I ordered the vest. We're going to have this conversation. And today I'm going to go for my first ruck with Stella.
I can't wait to hear about it.
I know.
Yes.
I'm nervous and excited. I'll probably FaceTime you. I'll be like, oh my God,
Yes.
why did I wait so long? That will probably be what I say.
Mhm.
All right, friend. Okay, let's jump into this. Let's start with the basics or at the beginning. What is rucking?
Rucking is simply walking with weight. As you said, you're going for a walk, you've got some weight on your back, whether that's in the form of a weighted vest, which I'm seeing a lot more of, or a ruck, which is actually the pack that holds the weight, so more resembles a backpack. And there are a couple differences, I would say, between the two and how they carry weight, which can lead to different types of benefits, which we can dive into too.
Yep. Awesome. Because that I think is a really important part, right? We really want to talk about like, okay, how do we start or where do we start? So that'll be a little bit later on in the conversation. What was, I guess, a little bit surprising to me, rucking has been around basically forever. I mean, it was like ancient Roman training. I mean, literally, it's been around forever.
Yeah, it has been since like humans have been rucking to build cities, to carry their, you know, animals that they've killed and now are eating. They had to get them back. And we didn't always have things like wheels or grocery stores. And essentially, we were just rucking with our survival gear for the longest time. And now we can sit in our office and order groceries and everything under the sun and communicate like this and not even come into contact with a single person in a day and still accomplish everything on our list. So it takes a little bit of effort to go, I think, outside that comfort zone, whether it's physically, whether it's mentally, and I feel like rucking kind of wraps that all up into one.
I would agree completely. And the ironic thing is, right, when I first learned about rucking through you, I was like, well, that just feels weird. And for a bariatric patient, it's a little, um, it gives you a lot of pause because now you're purposely putting weight back on your frame, weight that you have so desperately and difficultly worked to get off. So that concept of like, okay, I've lost 100 pounds, but now I'm going to put 16 pounds back on, even though I know it's temporary and it's not me. That's scary.
And I've gotten emails of people in tears or voice clips of just, okay, I've lost 100 pounds. I put 10 pounds on. And now you realize the difficulty of how much work that feels to carry that extra 10 pounds around. And then you're, teleport back to, okay, I was carrying an extra 100 pounds. Like, how did I do it? No wonder I was so tired or fatigued. So I feel like you can sneak in some non-scale victories on your progress, regardless of where you're at. And I think there's been some really interesting studies too, where wearing a weighted vest can actually help preserve like your resting metabolic rate too, so it can help in ways that we're just beginning to understand now too.
Yep. Well, and right? Rucking has been around literally forever. And yet in this modern day and age, we're scared to kind of add something in that we feel is not natural. But carrying weight as we move is the most natural thing for humans, really, since evolution. We've been designed to kind of do this. It's the modern life and our modern sedentary lifestyle that is what's really weird about how we live today.
Oh, absolutely. Even the last 100 years, things have changed so much. Or you
Yeah.
think even a couple generations back to grandma and grandpa on the farm, like all of that hard work. And now everything can be done from a laptop.
Yeah.
And you're lucky to get 1,500 steps in a day. Like I'm guilty of it too. It takes a lot of conscious effort, I think, to really
Yes.
build movement into your day.
Yep, it does, because being sedentary when and again in your book, this part that I highlighted, it was like, oh my God, yeah, most of my day is spent right sitting or laying down. It is not spent moving. And when I think about my grandparents, my grandma who's still alive, she'll be 93. She sits less than I do. And she's still kicking. So it's like, yeah, in the book, your husband describes like movement, right? Movement is the thing that helps you just really keep doing life in the way that you want to do it. And yet we're scared of it at the same time.
Yeah, like a body in motion stays in motion.
Yeah.
And ironically, it's because I get asked a lot, like, okay, I have like back pain or knee pain. How is rucking gonna, is it gonna make that worse? And I think ironically, it's actually like if we start moving our muscles a little bit more, it can help aid or prevent some of that too, when it's done in a safe manner, I'll say.
Yes. Yes. Yep. And we talk about that all the time in BariNation, right? Movement for us is anything that is accessible and above and beyond what we do in our day. That's it. That's movement. So it's not about like you instantly going to the gym and, doing a heavy lift set. No, no, no. It's about what is above and beyond what I already do and what's intentional. And walking is one of the things that is most accessible to all of us. And adding a safe amount of weight is where we can start, just leveling that up just incrementally.
Absolutely. And like you said, once you have the equipment too, it's free. So it doesn't take, I think, a big monumental investment or time investment. Like, I don't know about listeners or you, but once I think about going to the gym, I'm like, okay, well, when am I going to shower? That means I'm showering twice today. And then you have the round trip. And okay, well, now I got to pack 2 sets of clothes. And you're already like, I'm already creating roadblocks before I've even left the door
Yes.
when I can just throw some weight on and go for a walk at home.
Yes, right. And
Mhm.
not necessarily require that extra shower or whatever else we've thrown
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the way.
Hello, dry shampoo. Like, whatever.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think that's been my best friend now for years. Dry shampoo saves the
Yes.
day every
Yes.
time.
And you get great volume, which I
Oh,
could use, yeah, as much as yeah. I need all the help I can get. Yeah.
me too. Me too. We are the
Mhm.
same human, friend.
Yes.
Um, I want to read a passage from the book, and it's actually the second paragraph of the book of the introduction. You shared some very personal stories about how you came into rucking. And I'm just going to read it verbatim. And then if you feel comfortable, please expand more. You say, it might sound dramatic to say that rucking saved me, but shouldering the load helped me reclaim my sense of self, perseverance, and inner peace. Before rucking, I was stuck in a cycle of burnout and inconsistency, swinging between extremes, either in all or out, letting all or nothing thinking get the best of me. Rucking helped me find the middle ground, keep engaged in the process. Like a good friend, rucking delivers what you need.
Mhm. Yeah, it's crazy when I think about my, like, journey as a dietitian or, like, even before that, personal training was really the thing that got me, but I think like experts, like we still, we're not immune to a lot of those struggles. And I think getting a lot of mixed messages, whether it was what to do in the gym or nutrition, it was just overwhelming, I think. And that's really what sent me on the path to become a dietitian. But then I think the more I learned, the more it was like, okay, maybe these foods are good and are bad. And it took me a lot of time to really get beyond that. So it was either, again, like all in, all out. It was either, okay, I'm going to go to the gym for 2 hours or do some deep couch sitting. I felt like I really struggled to find like what was in between. And, this was mid pandemic when I found rucking and I was just really struggling mentally. At that time, I was working in a clinic in the midst of the pandemic. We were essential workers. And like, granted, I was outside the hospital. Like, it could have been a lot more, I think, burdensome, but it was just a very difficult time to be in healthcare. And essentially, kind of what edged me out was the stress from that. But among all that, I had my first panic attack, which I didn't know at the time. And it was really, I think, what sparked this journey of like me taking a step back to look at my lifestyle, like how I was soothing with food and booze, which really fueled anxiety. And, my doctor didn't come out and ask, like, oh, are you sleeping well? Are you moving? Like, how are you managing stress? It's like, while I'm just, kicking back a few drinks every night, does that help? you know? And ironically, that just makes things worse.
Dude,
Yes.
when you wrote that in the book, literally, I think that's the page that I highlighted so much that just bled through to the other side. And I was like, I had no idea alcohol consumption could do this to your emotional state, to your hormones, to everything that you're experiencing, right? I think you say here, like, the alcohol just amplifies this emotional hangover that you can feel afterwards. Well, yeah, no wonder why we feel so terrible when we consume alcohol when we're already struggling to deal with life.
Exactly. And while it might like take that edge off in the moment, I feel like that was something that really came up in the pandemic, especially for, I think, women, like started really drinking more heavily. And I mean, you see social media and it's a lot of like, joking moms like kicking back their wine at night and,
Yeah.
what's really in my coffee cup. And I feel like there was a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
And certainly, like, alcohol can really, like, compound that anxiety, or as I mentioned in the book, like, you get hangxiety,
Yes.
and yeah,
Yes. That's what it was.
and then you just
Anxiety.
feel like a frazzled mess.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
but
not only do you not feel good the next day, but your anxiety, your worry, your fears, everything is just amplified by like the
mhm,
number of drinks that you consume.
right.
And especially for bariatric systems, it is not a good mix.
Right, and you're more prone to that just because the anatomy
Yeah.
changes. You get that, when you go to quote unquote take the edge off, you get that emotional response. And then, transfer addiction is real. And I would say that that's probably very much underestimated. I can't remember the exact time I looked or the last stat. I want to say it was like 20% of, patients after gastric bypass. But, I feel like that is something that can be a really slippery slope.
Yeah, it can. So in the book, you beautifully describe this windy path that you kind of walked to the bottom of a valley. And it was a podcast episode that sparked your interest in rucking. So how did that feel in the moment? Or what was the thing that made you commit to trying rucking for the first time?
That's a good question. I think I was like, why I've been putting, things off. I wasn't working out. Gyms were closed at this time. I was like, I have equipment. I have an old backpack. I found a dumbbell, wrapped it in a bath towel, and put it in a backpack. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. I don't know what it was. I think I was just at the point where I'm like, I'm not fixing anything right now. Like, I'm just, sitting in my uncomfiness and being unhappy about it. There's only one person who can change that, and that's me. And what's there to lose, like trying to go for a walk with some weight on my back? And worst case scenarios, my neighbors laugh at me, but now they're used to it. So now they think they catch me. They're like, you don't have your pack on. But at first I'd hear like the slowing tires crunching behind me, and then just like, oh, I don't want to stop and say hi. Now it's a joke, and now some of my neighbors are even rucking. So joke's on them because, I had a positive influence there. But I think what really got to me too is I wanted to take my workout outside. For me, nature is very much a way for me to stay grounded. And I think I was just in such an unwell place mentally that the more time I spent outside and in nature, I just really felt like I kind of came back to me a little bit. And, I would say something that I share in the book was I was put on Prozac like after this, panic attack that was unknown
Mm-hmm.
at the time. And I really went from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I think medications certainly have a place. For me, I just felt like the dosage that I needed. Went from feeling, everything to feeling absolutely nothing. And I lost my creative edge. And that was just something I wasn't willing to give up. And I was able to kind of turn the tables around naturally by getting outside more. Rucking was a big piece of that because as much as I loved walking, it just didn't feel like that challenge that I wanted. I was like, I'm in a, relatively flat area. I go for a walk. Yes, that helps me mentally, but I still felt like I'm not getting that physical challenge that I want. Rucking really was the catalyst that helped me increase that intensity. I felt a lot leaner, which is something like I, certainly don't have the genetics for. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing some muscular definition and my posture's better. So I started to see some of those physical benefits, which originally I really wanted, but I kept coming back because of that mental improvement.
And I really think you hit the nail on the head there. This is something that I struggle with sometimes, and I know a lot of people do too. We know that walking is important, but we still say to ourselves, it's just walking,
It's not
right?
enough, right?
It's not enough. But then you introduce rucking, and all of a sudden that walking becomes more than walking, it becomes rucking. And the metabolic benefits, the overall holistic health benefits are proven time and time again by adding this simple thing. But then we find ourselves in a paradox. Oh, okay, well, I want to try rucking, but I'm scared. What if I hurt myself, or what if I can't do it, or what if? So then you still do nothing. Right? So it's this like, okay, I know I need to do more, but I'm too scared about this thing. So again, it's all or nothing thinking that continues to get in the way for us.
hmm And this is something I could really scale up. And I always like to stress the point every walk doesn't have to turn into a ruck, because
Yep.
I think that some of those days your body's just not going to feel up to it. The walk's going to help you more mentally versus going out for a hard ruck, for example. So I like that within this one exercise, I have so much variety. If I want to challenge myself, I can up the weight. If it's,
Hmm.
a day where I'm just not up to it, I'm scaling the weight down or not even carrying it altogether. So I really like the scalability, and it's something you can do with others. So that's something that I love, is going for a ruck with my husband, or, and even in his case, he has, autoimmune conditions, fibromyalgia. So,
Uh-huh.
it's very inconsistent. Some days he feels great, some days he feels like trash. And, he's able to scale things up or down as well too. So that's been
Yep.
really helpful. And then we get outside together, and then sometimes we'll get out with our ruck club and do it as a group. And I think that community aspect is really nice too, because I think people are just craving that community and connection too.
Yes. Right. And we just talked about this the other day in like BariNation leadership meetings, right? And really in the community. People really appreciate having these online spaces to connect in. They need them. It's where you learn. It's where you do the thing, the foundational work. But we're to the point post pandemic where people are ready to reconnect in real life with real people, and connecting in real life feels a heck of a lot easier when you feel that you already know somebody because you've spent so much time with them online. And I feel like rucking is one of those things that you can do virtually with other people, right? Because like you said, once you buy the vest, it's free. You're going out and you're walking with a weighted vest, but it allows you to talk with others who are doing the same thing, right? It builds that camaraderie. It builds that friendship. And then when you go do it in person, it just elevates the experience even more. So it's a
hmm
win-win for both.
Yeah, and as everybody gets a good workout. So what I
Yeah.
love is if you feel like, okay, I'm nervous to go as a group, like I've even gotten together with some of our, Berry Nation listeners,
Yep.
and
Yep.
we've rucked as part of our ruck club. And what's nice is I've had a lot of people who are like, okay, I'm nervous to ruck with a group. I don't want to slow them down. It's like, okay, well, maybe you go lighter, we go heavier. You can really kind of even it out where you've got your distance and your route picked out, but everybody can scale the weight up or down to really get
Yep.
the workout that they want, but still be able
Mhm.
to move collaboratively as a group.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of our most watched on-demand classes in BariNation. You've taught several rucking classes that we record, and I can see who's watching and how often it's being watched on the back end. And this has absolutely piqued people's curiosity and has inspired them to start thinking about and walking a little bit differently. So mission accomplished. And I know this is just the ground level because with this book, it's gonna go.
And
It's
I
gonna
have to
go.
thank the Berry Nation people, because I think I mentioned in the book that while I was teaching, it was a Rucking for Beginners class. I think I like made it my life's mission to make sure everybody tries it at least once. And then
Yes.
all of a sudden, this book deal came about. And I was like, had, all of our wonderful listeners not started asking questions or, really engage with that, I feel like this wouldn't have been an avenue. So thank you.
Shout out again. You guys heard it right straight from Kayla. Your engagement, your participation, you letting us know this content mattered, or when she said this, when they said this, that's what makes this kind of stuff. I'm holding up her book, the community, the education possible. And it might seem like it doesn't matter, but again, it absolutely does, because it changes the trajectory of what we can learn in our life. It's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. And and certainly writing a book was not on my agenda, 2 years ago. So
And now look, you get to cross it off. I think you should update like your life bingo card, because now you have a published author. You can cross off that.
Yes, it's surreal, because I know before we got on now, it's like, okay, what's the next project? Yep, what's next?
And I think I was reading too in your acknowledgments or thank yous or somewhere, you were like, oh, and I couldn't believe that I'm writing my first book. And I was like, oh, thank God, that means that there's a potential for a second. I'm
oh
like,
God, it's too soon. Don't ask me.
I know I won't. I won't.
So
I won't.
much word.
But isn't that crazy? That's instantly where my brain went. I was like, oh, good, she's going to write again.
Yeah, it
clearly
is
you're good
certainly
at
a
it.
labor. It's a labor of love. That's for sure.
Ain't that the truth?
It's a huge lesson in delayed gratification. I'll tell you that much.
Oh.
So hopefully the gratification starts coming.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure that happens. Don't worry. Don't worry. One of the many things that I appreciate about your book is you get right to it. Here's what rucking is, but then immediately move into here are all of the benefits that you can see and experience if you choose to start rucking. And it was, I feel like, maybe the biggest section of the book. You went through absolutely everything, through, mental health, through emotional health, physical, bone, muscle, tissue, metabolic, like, oh my God. So what are your top line benefits when it comes to rucking through the lens of sedentary lifestyle and bariatric patienthood?
I love this question, because I know I probably allude to it in the book, but don't talk specific in bariatric surgery. So I'm glad that we have this platform to break it down a little bit more. I think one of the biggest things I see, oftentimes after bariatric surgery, I hear, I'm going to, lose all my weight, then I'm going to start strength training. And I think in that process, you can lose a lot of muscle. Rucking is one thing where I feel like it really helps provide that resistance. So it is weight bearing. So you really get that musculature benefit, while maybe prioritizing fat loss. So I feel like it can very much help with body composition. Not to mention you feel so much stronger, because I hear from a lot of people just, okay, I've lost weight, but I also feel like I've lost a lot of my strength with that. So this is one way to offset that. I will say in the scope of bariatrics, this is a great way to help preserve bone density, or for women kind of around that perimenopause time when estrogen is really changing. This can help offset some of that loss of bone density. So one thing, I won't go on my calcium soapbox, I promise, but I will say that one thing that really gets missed is, yes, nutrition, calcium are important for bone density, but one big piece that's missing is you need that weight-bearing exercise to really help preserve. So if you imagine somebody's lost 40, 80, 150 pounds, you lose that stimulus on your skeleton. So by adding weight back in the form of a weighted vest or a ruck, you help provide that weight-bearing stimulus that helps tell your skeleton, hey, we still need this bone density. So when it comes to just losing weight without adding that weight back on, it can really offset, or I should say, lead to less strong bones. You look like you want to ask you had a moment, so let's break it down.
I did. All of a sudden something clicked in my brain and I was like, oh, I never thought about it that way. When I went in for bariatric surgery, they did a, obviously full metabolic panel and bone density and blah, blah, blah. And my numbers came back and they weren't reviewed. It was just, here's where you're at. Well, in a recent appointment with my new primary care physician, not only did I get my numbers, but he compared them to my old numbers. And again, he was like, I'm amazed at how healthy you are. And he said, you went into bariatric surgery actually very healthy in terms of muscle mass, bone density, all of these things that kind of help you function well as a human. And he had said, it makes sense. And I've heard this from other doctors and for people. sometimes, right, bariatric patients, you really do go into surgery healthy in a lot of ways because your skeleton is built for carrying this extra weight, which means you can have more muscle mass, you can have higher bone density, all this stuff. And when you said that, I was like, oh my God. Yeah, no wonder why rucking could be so beneficial for bariatric patients as soon as you're really cleared for movement, because you're keeping the temporary weight on. You're telling your body and your system, no, 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 we need to stay this strong because this is what we want to maintain. But you're taking the weight off and allowing the other metabolic factors to work internally. So, like, rucking is a phenomenal answer to that big worry that we all have after bariatric surgery, which is muscle loss and bone loss.
Huge. Exact. Yeah, you nailed it. And it really provides, again, that stimulus, and it's low impact. So you get to help, I think, preserve that muscle, preserve that bone density. Because like you said, I agree 100%. A lot of people, especially if you would consider yourself like, oh, I'm big boned, or I can
Yeah.
usually, I feel pretty muscular. You can really help preserve that, because what I see is a lot of times when people are comparing their body composition scans, they expect to gain muscle. And really,
Yeah.
I would say when you're in that weight loss phase, it is huge if you can just maintain it or lose
Yes.
just a little
A
bit of
little
muscle,
bit.
because you're always going to
Yes.
probably lose a little bit. But if you're able to preserve the most amount of muscle and bone density, that is a huge win, because that means you're losing, pure fat essentially. And
Yes.
there's a
And
lot of appetite mechanisms at play too that we're just starting to understand.
I mean, I could read the entire book on this podcast as an audio because that's how good it is. You really go into depth in a very understandable way, explaining how rucking helps with this metabolic syndrome and helps us maintain or become a little bit more metabolically flexible. So will you kind of explain what that flexibility is and how rucking can help with that?
Yes. So typically, like, metabolic flexibility in simple terms is how you can switch from burning fat as fuel to carbs as fuel. And I think a lot of times, if you're that person where you really struggle to make it more than 2 or 3 hours, like you get hangry, you get shaky, like that probably is a good indicator that maybe you've got some underlying insulin resistance. Your body's preferring carbohydrates, some quick fuel. You have a hard time like accessing those fat stores. And with something like rucking, for example, you're helping hold your muscle, which is going to be your biggest reservoir to help combat something like insulin resistance. Because a lot of times it's not that you don't have enough insulin, it's there, it's just not catching on. And movement is one of the biggest things that you can do to help manage blood sugar without insulin. So that muscle contraction can help bring down your blood sugar without the need for insulin. So you can really kind of bypass that insulin resistance with something like moving. Rucking is going to help preserve that muscle and help make sure that you can maximize your blood sugar management. If anybody follows me and knows that I love talking about blood sugar too.
Yes.
But that in a whole sense can be, huge just for managing a lot of blood work. It can also help with inflammation, which a lot of times just inflammation breeds more inflammation. So if you can really start to tamp that down, your systems are, working as well as they
Hmm.
can, and things are going to where they need to go. So you don't have nutrients stuck in circulation. They're able to get to your cells, for example. So metabolic flexibility is essentially making sure that you're ridding all of those toxins. Things are going where they need to go. It's not necessarily like your metabolism or how many calories you're burning. It's how efficiently your cellular machinery is essentially going. So sometimes you get you know, some hitches in metabolic resistance or
Hmm.
excuse me, in metabolic flexibility with insulin resistance, where it's there, it's just not working properly. So if you
Yeah.
can just get those cells like operating, a lot of times it takes these small, unsexy changes like moving and sleeping well and managing your stress. So it's not something that changes overnight. But as you're able to chip away at that, or specifically something like visceral fat too, which is really kind of packed around your organs, that's going to help increase that metabolic flexibility. So I know I kind of skated the pond and there was a lot of avenues. So let me know if I can clarify any of, that.
Yeah, I think there's so much there to unpack, and that is for a different conversation. But the visual that kind of popped into my brain as you were talking is like, if I think of the disease of obesity, right, working in my life, I am that person who gets hungry very quickly, right? So that is my body asking for carbs. because that's the fuel that it wants to burn. So it's almost like the disease of obesity, this metabolic syndrome, right? My system wants to burn carbs. That's how obesity is impacting that. When you add in intentional movement like rucking, you're basically kicking into gear that metabolic flexibility, and you're allowing your muscles to say, hey, I want fuel, but I want fuel in the form of fat. So it's almost like you're talking back to the disease of obesity. You're acknowledging that it's there, right? Yep, carbs are a part of life, and that's great. But I also want you to start now using fat for energy, and we signal that by moving, specifically rucking.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, it's like your cells are starved, the energy's there.
Yeah.
Your cells can't access it, but movement can help be the bridge to help, your cells access that.
Yes.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. I feel like I'm going to formally invite you back right now so that we can
Yeah.
really unpack this. Okay. Okay. I want
Yeah.
to get that on the record. I want to get that on the record.
I know. I feel like every time I just botch, like I've had a few people like, what is metabolic flexibility? I'm like, oh my gosh, how long do you have? Like, I know we're on a time crunch here. So,
Dude, I literally
yeah.
highlighted that because it was one of the things that I was like, I can just read this verbatim, because finally I was like, oh, it's right here. Metabolic flexity refers to how efficiently you can switch between burning glucose and fat.
Hmm. I
Oh,
have a blog post that's in the making that is explaining metabolic flexibility Minnesota style. So it talks about like going ice fishing and using a generator. Like, so
oh my
once I
God.
have that, it's a great visual. I've got it crafted. It just needs some like tying up with a bow. So once I
Some
have that, I can
zhuzhing.
post it in the nation too, just
Oh,
to help take this picture and put a nice bow on it. So it
thank
will
you.
be Midwest style. Metabolic flexibility broken down.
Dude, as long as I can understand it in any style, not
Yes.
medical jargon, we'll be through with that. And when you do get that, I will make sure that we link it in the show notes as well. So no matter when you're watching or listening to this episode, you can tap into that resource.
Perfect.
So, and again, friends, if you are listening and watching and you're like, okay, I really want to ask Kayla this question, or what does this mean? Or I'd like more information on this, let us know. And it's really simple. You can comment on this episode. You can send us an email to hello@BariNation.com. Or if you're a member of the community, just send us a DM so that when we get back together with Kayla, we can ask her your specific questions to make sure that we are, that we're arming you with the education that you need to make the right decisions that are best for you and your overall health. So if you are like me and you are inspired to try rucking, where do we start, Kayla?
Yes, I know we've made it past like what chapter? We haven't even gotten to chapter 3 yet.
No, not even.
um, I would say starting out, like you've got your vest. You can also use something like a ruck, but with just like any exercise, I would say form comes first. So if you are more sedentary, if walking sometimes just feels like a lot, maybe it starts with just getting some steps under your feet and then slowly adding in weight. So most people I would say can comfortably start with 10 to 15 pounds. I would maybe err on that 10 pounds and see how it feels, because one thing that's surprising is how that can really change your posture. Even by adding a little bit of weight, you're going to feel little maybe cricks in your shoulder like I did. I was like, wow, like my alignment is way out of alignment. But once you put something like a ruck on, that's going to help straighten out your shoulders. A weighted vest, you certainly get that weight bearing benefit, but you might not get as much posture benefit, since a weighted vest carries some weight on the front, some weight on the back. If you really want the posture benefit, I might say do something like a ruck or a backpack, essentially, where you can swap out weight plates and you can really scale up or down. Weighted vest is very nice because it's just easy to throw on and go. So you can even
Yep.
do it when you're around the house. It'll certainly challenge, like you're going to squat down to pick something up different or engage your core. So it's very good for core strength, but even doing little chores around the house is a great way to cue into some of how you're posturing, how you're picking things up. So it doesn't have to be just going out for a ruck, for example. You can even, wear it doing house chores.
That's such a great idea. I never would have thought of that. And like for me, that's a great like toe dip into this, because it's like I don't want to go out and walk a mile and then injure myself or, whatever. But I can certainly throw it on when I'm doing dishes or laundry, or I do this thing called a clean sweep where I just pick up everything that doesn't belong where it is and then I go distribute it back to where it belongs. I can easily throw this weighted vest on when I'm doing that, and I'm getting very similar benefits.
Exactly. And you're doing, you think of you're squatting down to get something and you've got an extra 16
Yeah.
pounds on, like all of that little bit adds up. And I would say for newbies, maybe it looks like a mile or less, or depending on your current walking routine, like I certainly wouldn't push past 2 miles, especially for your first like couple weeks. So maybe it looks like rucking 2, maybe 3 times a week, giving yourself at least a day in between to recover. Because what I find is, even though you come back from a ruck, you feel like maybe I can add more weight, you might notice like your hips get tight or, things just feel a little bit different when you have that extra resistance. The one nice thing again is rucking is low impact, so it really minimizes compared to something like running. You don't have that higher impact, but it
Mhm.
it still is going to maybe change your gait a little bit, or you might feel again some cricks and creaks as you get straightened out. So start with maybe 10 or 15 pounds, no more than a mile or two. And then if that feels pretty comfortable, maybe a couple weeks, you're adding 5 pounds and just going up in small increments. I would say max, like no more than say 25-30% of body weight, which you might never get there. You don't have to ruck with a third of your body weight to get the benefits, which is really nice. So for me personally, it's like my base weight now is 20-25 pounds. If I'm feeling like I really want to challenge myself, maybe it's 30 or 35, but I'm not doing 5 miles. I'm doing a really short, heavy ruck. And then if I want to go for something longer, maybe it's lighter. So adjusting the weight based on on your distance as well. So trying not to go, again, that all or nothing thinking, trying not to
Mhm.
go all in or all out. You're kind of easing in and scaling it up or down depending on how your body's feeling for the day.
Yep. And I looked at the Go Ruck packs, which I know you love. You recommend that. That is what you work with. And, you're spending 150 bucks to get set up. And I was hesitant to pull the trigger on that because I was like, well, what if I don't like it? And then I literally went to Amazon, and this is, I think, a 16-pound weighted vest. It was on sale for $10. And I was like,
Wow.
okay, this gives me permission to just try. And then if I do like it, adding to the equipment is something that I could do down the road. But just to get started to see what this was all about, that was the road that I took. And there's probably deals all the time that you can find on places like Amazon. If you're kind of like me and you're like, I don't want to spend $100, but I kind of want to try this. There are very affordable options out there.
And I will say I was like that at first too, and now I don't even want to tell you how many packs. It's but you will have them for life. I will
Yep.
say it's a thing that you have that one-time investment, and what's nice is I canceled my gym membership because I can throw my ruck on and I will do step-ups on a box with my ruck on or lunges. Like, I can actually use that to do
Yeah.
resistance exercises, and probably in a whole nother podcast episode, but I will say that you make that one-time investment and it's something that you have for a lifetime.
It is a wonderful way to broaden our horizons when it comes to movement. It really is. It's that accessible, uh, really safe thing that we can do. Just this tiny little can have benefits. And I am going on my first rec today. I will give a full report when that is done. But I'm really excited to see what it is. And your book truly is an inspiration for people who are just like me, wanting to start but a little bit nervous. So thank you for this.
I am so excited for you. And thank you for having me. Yes, this was really my goal, was to make rucking more accessible because I understand that it can be very, very intimidating. And my goal was to make it very approachable because I think that nearly anybody can benefit regardless of age or fitness level. But I do understand the nervousness and anxiety that comes with something new, but I promise you will love it. And I can't wait to hear how your first ruck goes.
Oh my gosh. All right, friends. You heard it from the wizard herself. Kayla, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Oh, all right, friends. If you would like to purchase Kayla's book, we will link it in our show notes. It is called Ruck Fit, a 10 out of 10 recommendation for me. And if you would like to join me and Kayla and us in a rucking adventure, please do so. Just tag us on socials, tag us in both of our communities. Let us know that you are giving this a try. And Kayla, we'll see you back soon as we deep dive into more of these topics.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
That wraps up another empowering episode of the BariNation Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, keep the conversation going by joining the BariNation membership community, where you can attend live support events, access on-demand resources, and find a caring community.
Join us at barination.mn.co. If you found this podcast valuable, help us produce it by becoming a $5 monthly supporter at BariNationPodcast.com.
And just remember, at the end of the day, you've got this, we've got you, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.